Okay, terrific. So I have the catalog pulled up and I'm going to screen share the catalog. And while I do, I hope that you will mute yourselves. And I'm going to go through the catalog and I'm going to, I have excerpted a paragraph from every person who submitted, everybody who's included. I excerpted a short paragraph that I could read rather than commenting in a more random way. I'll definitely have some comments to make, and hopefully by doing it this way, we will have time to have a little conversation at the end. So I have it scripted and I am going to run with it. And I do encourage you, because of the format we use, which is issue.com, and there'll be a link on the website this afternoon. So you can always go to my website to watch this or to go through the book on your own. The statements are very powerful. And obviously in the short amount of time that we're spending together today, we don't have time to read through each of the statements and really do them justice. But I'm hoping after the introduction, which this is just a little teaser today, after today, I hope you'll take time, and you're certainly free to share the catalog link that'll be on the website with anyone you'd like. The catalog will be on Amazon, available probably in about a week. So you can purchase a copy if you want to. We don't mark it up. This part of this is not a money-making endeavor. I'm still getting over the flu. I'm on day 14 and I'm still a little dry now and then. So if I cough a little bit, please forgive me. The other thing about the format that we use when you're looking at this, which is fabulous, is that when you're going through the presentation, down on the right-hand side, there is a little slider bar so that you can literally slide it over and close in to look at details of the works. And I'm hoping that you will remember that that's there and take full advantage of that when you look at it on your own, because obviously there's a lot of work that can't be fully appreciated when we're not standing in front of it in person. And I think textile work in particular suffers a little bit from the translation of being at a distance on the screen. So that's a program that we used last year and it seemed to work really well. So I hope it'll work that way for you this time as well. I can't think of anything else to get started unless there is a question before we begin. Zena has prepared, she's not with us this afternoon, but she did prepare in advance a viewer's choice form. And at 3:15 my time, CST, that form will be emailed automatically to everyone in the group so that you can go through the catalog again. So you might keep that in mind while we're going through rather quickly today in case you'd like to cast a vote for the viewer's choice. That's about the only time we ever let anybody be part of a poll or a vote. So if you've been missing that opportunity to feel somewhat in control and commanding, this is your opportunity. Okay. Okay, so mute up and here we go. Welcome to Inspired by Archetypes, Creative Strength Training, Members Work from 2021. Of course, this is what the catalog looks like as it's laid out. And so you see here an overview of all of the artists who have participated, and then my introduction. And I include the introduction because this is always seen by people who are not in creative strength training. And so it not only shares your work and gets your work in front of the eyes of people who would not otherwise see it, it also requires some explanation so that people out there who are unfamiliar with archetypes have an opportunity to become more familiar before we actually dive into the work. And the program that we use sorts all of this alphabetically, and we started with the A's the last time we did this. So today we're starting with the Z's and working through the alphabet the other direction in order to be fair. And I want to make sure to thank Lynn Luukkonen, who was, of course, our exhibition coordinator, because she's the one who collected all the information and helped everybody organize their pictures and then passed it off to Wayne so that he could do the layout. And we're starting with Zoe. The three digital composites shown here are part of a growing series titled Self-Portrait of an Archetype. Each was meant to map a single archetype by exploring memories, personal challenges, and lessons learned under their influence. However, as I travel further down the road, it becomes harder to separate the individual archetypes, and I can always see the hint of all 12 in each piece. Zoe, just from a technical standpoint, and here we have heart hunters. Zoe comes up with all of the props and then sets up the individual elements, and her husband takes the pictures, and then she uses a Photoshop program in order to assemble these into very powerful stories. And she does emphasize the storyteller in her narrative. Here we have Perigee Path and Self-Worth. Vicki Fincham, Committee. I took an ice dyeing class, and one of the pieces I created deserved to be studied closer. In it, I found the images of beings. And what I would like to encourage you to do as we're going through the presentation, you can read everything later. So focus on the images and just listen to what I share with you. I think that's probably the best strategy, so you don't miss the wonderful visuals. Vicki wrote, I knew that these were my archetypes. From left to right is the mother who holds a child in her womb, the saboteur, the rebel, and the student who is learning and soaring with newfound knowledge. I hand-dyed the background fabric and added paint to accentuate the images. Teresita Liao. The power of positive destruction is enormously healing and liberating. I believe that in every case, the result was positive, but the process not always smooth. So I do have a destroyer, and has helped me to grow as an artist and in my personal life. And the backstory on this piece briefly is that she started this to be literally a vase, and then wasn't happy with how it was going, and so she cut it up. And that is the impulse behind the destroyer. Suzanne Evanson. As each archetype was introduced, I worked at creating new images using photographs and illustrations from my own childhood storybooks. I thought about the meaning each archetype holds for me, and the resulting images are my personal expressions. They are not illustrations. I decided to print the images as a composite on paper, which will be framed. Of the 20 images in the grid, there are 16 archetypes, and some of the archetypes are dual. And this is a great example of an opportunity you'll have later to enlarge the image and really study some of these in detail, because they're quite interesting. Susan Buckingham. Me, Myself, and My Creative I is a digitally composed piece that merges photos of me as an adult, myself as the happy child, and the I of the dilettante, as characterized by the magpie. The happy child and dilettante are constant companions. I remain happy in my creative pursuits, and the dilettante, sitting on my shoulder, calls for experimentation and to try new things. This is printed cotton fabric with hand-dyed borders, has been freehand quilted on my domestic machine. Obstacles. Sue Ellen Romanowski. I have sewn since my youth, and in the mid-'80s, I became interested in quilting, which became my passion. I seldom use a pattern, but I still experience obstructions when I attempt to produce art. Between my committee and the saboteur, I struggle. Wonderful representation in an abstract way of that. Sue Bates. On the outside, I'm a quiet, petite, elderly woman with osteoporosis and acid reflux. But on the inside, I'm a 20-something, fire-breaking, karate-kicking rebel. Just so you know. Sonia. I was curious about these pieces, so I wrote to Sonia and asked her about the progression, which came first. And she said she sort of worked at them at the same time. This one, Voices, was her coming to terms with voices in her head and questioning negative comments from the past. But when she finished that piece, or in the midst of doing that piece, she also had this piece underway, Saboteur versus Rebel, and she wrote about it. As I began a new project, different from other quilts I made in the past, I found myself reverting to an old design. Afraid to share a new design with CST members, doing something safe, sabotaging myself and my creativity. In other pursuits, I'm a rebel, not afraid to take risks and try new things. Compelled to make my old design new, I allowed the rebel to take over to complete the project. I celebrated my freedom by adding all of the embellishments. And it turned out really, really well, Sonia. Sharon Rowley on the left. This past year, I traveled to meet myself as a child and discovered her story was very different from what I had been raised to believe. The key elements of Breathe are the photo of myself as a child and the protection she's experiencing from the hardy cyclamen. The arcs of spiral dots surrounding her come from our frequent relocating to protect the child, which prevented any experience of feeling settled. The child now recommends, after 67 years of silence, breathe out the worry and breathe in the calm. I was delighted in my research to discover the cyclamen signifies healing of the child. Jean Hoskin. Jean created several pieces and their combinations. Here we see on the left the artist engineer, and she wrote, "The first is artist engineer because my background is a mixture of art and science. Printmaking also combines science and art. Second combination is miser addict on the right, presented as a focus on time. I'm very protective of my time to think and plan. For the addict, I'm a collector. In this print, I used images to represent my textile collection from international travel." And on the left here, the third group is teacher, student, researcher. I'm constantly exploring color and design and still active in training textile teams on color evaluation protocols. And this is a particularly wonderful example of combining abstracted printed imagery with the collaged elements that you see as the background in the piece. Rachel Durstein. My window series is about interior and exterior, the safety of being hidden and the risk of being exposed or vulnerable. And she also talked about the abandoned child. And so that's a reference that you should keep in mind with this wonderful piece on the left. What were the costs of remaining in the safety of isolation? More recently, I've been drawn to creating works depicting trees and their restorative power. And she has a great deal more to say about that in her very sensitive artist statement. So I hope you'll make time to read it later. Here is Magic Twilight on the right. Paula Dean. Paula sent us two pieces. The one you're seeing here is Isolation, and she wrote, "Are you walking out of the door or coming in? This represents the strong hermit inside. The illegible writing expresses the contradiction of loneliness when in a crowd and the comfort in the quiet of being alone." And in this piece, Unforeseen, she wrote, "What are you seeking? Mystery, excitement, inner peace, enlightenment? The seeker archetype is always looking for the unique, unforeseen experience. The unfamiliar excites me, and I will leave no rock unturned." Nori McElraith, incredibly beautiful and ethereal garment. She wrote, "This work represents my nature child. Called Nature's Bounty, I've made a caftan style wrap using silk textiles I dyed using botanical printing. The plants were either grown in my yard, a friend's yard, or collected responsibly." And she goes into detail in her statement about how she actually created the garment, which is truly a nature goddess garment. Noelle Evans. While a doorway has a particular meaning for me, there is room for you, the viewer, to resonate with that symbol in your own way. When I can achieve that level of duality of offering suggestions that are open for interpretation, I know I have done my best work. It must be meaningful for me. Equally important is that you, the viewer, find your own meaning in the work. Nancy Tully. restless, irritable, and discontent. This is an ode to the addict archetype, which has found fertile ground within my soul. For me, at the heart of stitching and making lies a process that allows me to connect to something deeper and bigger than myself. And in her statement, she alludes in even greater detail to how that helps calm the addict self. Perhaps it's because the practice of putting pieces of material together to provide protection is as basic to human existence as hunting and gathering. Or perhaps it is the meditative nature of drawing a needle in and out of the fabric. All I know is that it works over and over and over again. And when we have to run up against our own addict behavior, isn't it great when it's something that produces a piece as wonderful and meaningful as this? Nan Travers. Mother May I explores the dynamic we've developed inside ourselves around asking permission of the mother archetype to go forward in our lives, plus the fear that our inner mother will say no, step back 3 paces. Like the childhood game, this piece has set the mother tree front and center, dominating the forest of her offspring, determining who will be nurtured and survive and who will be sent backwards from the rest. Mother May I? How many times have we asked that question? And how much do we let the answer shadow what we do next? Monica Bennett. Now, I couldn't really pull much out of Monica's that would simplify this, so instead I'm going to tell you the story. Monica was stuck and she had tried to do a number of things, and she has some skills that are really admirable, and she does beautiful work and is very on top of everything, but she wanted to get in touch with her child. She was frustrated. Life, she says in her essay, got in the way until she just did it. She went to the beach and she created this installation. And she took pictures of it, thank goodness. In the meantime, she decided that she wouldn't enter the exhibition after all because she didn't really have something that she thought would work. But a friend suggested that perhaps this was what she should enter, and I'm so pleased that she did. And so here we have Playing with Nature, an installation on the beach that invited other people to appreciate it and be part of it as well. And Monica said in her essay, when she was working on the piece, I felt alive, rejuvenated, happy, and joy-filled. Joy is my word for 2021. That day I found it again. Thank you, nature child. Mary Shaw. In 2021, MK, Mary, used the medium of jelly printing to explore the child archetype. And so here you see her shadow child as well as her light child. The light child is the yellow one, and the blue is the shadow. And the child jumping rope, the silhouette, is the bridge between the two. That represents her desire to accept both sides of herself. And in the last line of her statement, she wrote, "Isn't it a beautiful irony that my shadow sheds light on me?" Marilyn George, Nature's Child. This is a recycled fabric collage, and the focus is on the child who loves nature and has been nurtured to love all of creation. And here we have a photo that Marilyn reinterpreted in stitch of herself with her grandparents, and she's looking down at the road, at a rock or a flower. The stenciled and stitched plants are from her environment to complement the recycled furniture samples, and the lace cloth is from the era of her early family. Marilyn Waite. Marilyn sent 2 pieces for us to share with you. This is Tears of the Seeker first. Marilyn is also a writer, and she has been writing haiku and short poems that would go along with the artwork she was creating. An excerpt from her essay says, "My image is only one aspect of tears. It is also about delivering messages. I've learned that if the message has an emotional quality, I must prepare myself for tears. But that awareness has become beneficial. The mystical part is that manifesting the image helps dissipate the trigger for the tears. The unconscious and the conscious work together creatively to solve what caused anxiety and weakened presentations and arguments in the past. Lynn Lee. This piece represents Lynn's abandoned child, and it is called I'm Here. Can you hear me? She wrote, I'm locked up and behind bars. I can see out, but I'm alone, seldom seen or heard. And you can see the image, the Klimt image on the right-hand side, which has been incorporated into the garment as a literal example within this beautiful and lyrical piece. I come and go to the cage, not daring to fully emerge. There has to be a safe place to retreat to. The pieces and pathways of the quilt are the paths I've traveled over the years. Some straight, some curved and bent, all lead interesting places. Some are dark and painful, others glow and are full of light. As I constructed this, memories and words that I dwell on have been buried within the layers to both recognize where I've traveled from and how I got to where I am. It's time to move on and build more roads and experiences that are open, joyful, and connected to others. The path is open and the lines meander as I move forward. Lynn Bainbridge, Ghosts. I decided to play with non-representational forms with a limited palette. Paint was applied to gessoed paper with no outcome intended. Layers were added and overpainted just to enjoy the process of handling the paint. It was a surprise to step back and see ghostly figures moving across the paper. I saw the interplay of all of my archetypes, my whole history. Ghosts is the result. It gave such pleasure and reconnected me with my love of painting. Lucy Bloom, Nature Child. This is my core archetype. My creativity comes from nature. My art quilt collage is a gathering of earth tones, flowers, and a beautiful sky. I've included textures using various fabrics and embroidery. I hope the colors and textures give a feeling of calm and relaxation. Lucy Barry Snyder. In reference to this exhibition and the archetypes, I have felt challenged, frustrated, and fascinated all at once for 2 years. I thought I'd do a series, but during the last few weeks, I realized I needed to find my core and make some choices and move on. When I discovered this baby photo, it was like a lightning bolt. My mother's words rang in my ears. You were born a free spirit, full of gold dust and the ocean, and your arms always reaching up to catch life. While I will continue to explore my unique archetypes and how I can live more in the light, I am also going to rest in the knowledge that it is enough. I am enough. From 0 to 70, archetypes at the core. Lisa Check. Slave to Color. This image came to me fully formed, much like my colorway inspirations for my yarns. As I wrote about the servant archetype, these questions from Jane struck me. Do you see your creative expression as a mistress? Does it demand anything of you? While the servant is not one of my inner 8, my art is a demanding mistress. My dye work demands that I dye every day. My creative spirit is busy all the time. Lindsay Webster, The Eternal Child. My archetypes loom large and are powerful as support for creativity, as well as forces for apathy, inertia, and distraction. Through CST, I found ways to tame their shadow sides and focus on accomplishing artwork. I was most able to manifest ideas by using images of myself as the main character. Here we have the rebel and the seeker. Linda Nelson Johnson, Coming Home. The barn featured in this piece is from my line of stencils. I find I am incorporating past creative experiences and nature with newly found methods and adventures, many of which include cloth and sewing, my first 2 loves. However, I'm always open to new methods of creating art, and my new adventure is exploring eco-printing possibilities with the heat press. This allows me to combine my early farm and outdoor experience with my knowledge of design. And I'd like to interject here that working with archetypes doesn't necessarily mean that it always needs to be obvious to the viewer. Whatever you feel compelled to make is what you make. So in some cases, the archetypes themselves are in the background and not so obvious, or in this case, Linda's nature child, I believe, was playing along with her. Linda J. Casey, Birth of a Dilettante. I've always been drawn to the unfinished, unsung works of fellow textile artists. I think about the why. Why was it never finished? Are they, like me, always attracted to the next new thing? Did they suffer a great loss that caused the piece to remain unfinished? Birth of a Dilettante starts with that premise. The entire piece is designed to pay honor to the woman who will never know that her hours of work and a piece left undone became the foundation for a new creation. And this is just another one of those pieces that I hope you'll be able to zero in on or kind of zoom in on, because all of these individual parts that she created are really very stunning. Linda A. Miller, Seeking Heart. The seeker, the driver of my spiritual journey, encourages looking within and to the wider world of answers to deeper questions. Even when answers are not clear, my seeker helps me see with the eyes of my heart. This piece is such a wonderful example of how poetry can take a visual form, as is this piece by Leslie Turner, Mother of Mother. Mother of Mother is the beginning of a series exploring the nurturing mother archetype. I worked with a prehistory petroglyph symbol from Central Asia, interpreting it as the continuance of life through the mother-daughter connection. Leela McKee Friel. I chose the nature child archetype because it is a strong voice in my life as much as my love of textiles. Growing up in nature and being nurtured by nature, and then nurturing back. And we have nature child and nurture. Kristen Rohr, The Miser. The miser is surrounded by threats great and small, random and targeted, and believes that the way to security is through material goods, especially money. In this abstract stitched piece, a miser has built a circular fortress around her possessions in order to be safe in a chaotic world. Projectiles zoom past with dizzying speed. You never know when disaster could strike next. K. Nicosia. I chose Our Lady of Guadalupe as one representation of Mary in the Southwestern culture. This work is entitled Primary Marys. She is depicted in the primary colors of red, blue, and yellow as a reference to all the possible colors of earth and humanity. I love that. For so many people, Mary represents women who are courageous, loving, spiritual, and visionary. Catherine Dean, Questions in the Moonlight. For Questions in the Moonlight, I was inspired by the concept of the seeker archetype, envisioned lying in a meadow at the top of a hill, watching the moon rise and being pulled toward its wisdom and magic. Karen Sophia Smith, Me and My Wisdom. In Me and My Wisdom, my intention is to illustrate the possibility of the divine feminine presence in our lives. I believe I am in relationship with this aspect of humanity and the divine, and that she directs my life. I am represented by the turquoise figure who has human body parts. Wisdom, my Sophia, is represented by the white figure in the piece, who is without human body parts, but generates the spiral of life in her being. Karen McCann, Runaway Train. I am the conductor, and the speeding train is a metaphor for my life. I can dictate the speed of the train. I can invite and uninvite people onto my train. As long as I remember I am the conductor of my train, I will be able to set the pace of my life. With the help of my prostitute and caretaker, I will be able to fulfill my seeker's desires to live the creative life of an artist, seeking to make sense of her world through photos. Karen Collette Frank, Earth Mother. My life in the rural Vermont woodlands, where she and her husband go in the summertime, is very different from my life in Florida. During the 12 plus years we've worked on building our place, I've developed a bond with the land. The trees and the plants are entirely different. This is the world Earth Mother comes from. I used an assortment of yarns to crochet the nest, hammered copper and aluminum wire as embellishments. The stones, pine cones, moss, and fungus were collected on our property. I used 2 blue jay feathers, the longer one from Vermont for Earth Mother, and the smaller one from Florida for Nature Child. Jeanette Floyd. Sunflower, Epitaph. The archetypes for this piece were the child and the caretaker. You see, my father taught me how to grow sunflowers as a little girl, and it was my most vivid memory of him immediately after his passing. I can no longer grow sunflowers with my dad, but I have made one in his memory. And I hope you'll return to Jeanette's statement and read the wonderful poem that she included here as a tribute to her father. In addition to that piece, Jeanette shared these 2 pieces, African Print Log Cabin, and this represents her student artist, and 60s mid-century modern Marbles, which represents her artist. And she wrote as part of this statement, the artist goes where the artist goes. Come on. Sorry, the dog is snoring. Jan Glisson. Creative juices flowed strongly as I deconstructed this piece, which I began in 2009, and I played with the composition. The red zigzag spoke loudly. Pathway, journey, put your shoes on, leave footprints to show you've been here. The quote I chose was a message to myself. Being a member of CST has given me the courage and support to keep on my creative journey. Adding hand stitching to this piece as the final step seems to bring it full circle and complete this chapter of my artist's story. Emerging from the shadows, one foot in front of the other. Janice Updike Walker. My series, titled Matriarch, depicts 3 vignettes from my grandmother's life as they intersect with my personal archetypes. On the right here, we see She Dreamed of Voting, which represents the advocate archetype. I created a pictorial saga of women's suffrage as experienced by 4 generations of my maternal females. And this is another example of a piece where I'm just going to encourage you to enlarge it when you're looking at the catalog on your own so that you can fully appreciate the work that went into creating it. Here on the left, we have another piece, Necessity is the Mother of Invention. Her mother was widowed at a young age and the house was sold. And so this is a tribute to that young, brave woman. And the materials support that tribute. On the right, we have She Once Lived on Lover's Lane, which is a composite of 2 vintage silk kimono, one of which belonged to her grandmother, heavily embroidered again by Janice in order to deal with the inevitable shredding that happens to silk of a particular era like this, wonderfully rescued in this piece, She Once Lived on Lover's Lane. Janie Crook. I find that I resonate with the dilettante archetype quite strongly in my day-to-day life. In this piece, My Butterfly Brain, I used many different techniques and the piece seemed to grow by itself and then all miraculously fit together. And what looks like the brain here, she's so smart, was actually a jelly plate print of a ligularia leaf that she grew in her garden. And each of those butterflies represents thought processes. Ileana Soto. Ileana created 3 wonderful pieces, which she shared with us. She writes about each of them extensively. This is Warrior. I'm choosing to focus on part of the statement for networker on the left. I wanted to express the complexity and depth of the ways our lives intersect and give us a sense of community with empathy towards one another. In 2020, we learned to depend on technology to keep our connections alive when we couldn't touch one another. This is a particularly wonderful example of using geometric shapes symbolically to represent a certain part of technology, and then to use the handmade marks to represent everything else about us that's human and random. And then on the right, we have the healer. Ginny Dixon. Nothing is more fun than starting with white fabric and playing with many different surface processes. It reminds me of the fun of finger painting as a child. My intent is to let the fabric speak by designing my quilts around the fabrics I create. So the child in Ginny is definitely playing when she's in the dye studio, but also when she's preparing to put these pieces together. Each piece evolves to become its own without my forcing it to a preconceived idea. Here we have the wonderful floating storyline. And on the left, inner child, favorite color. Ginny Ewers. Just as pressure, time, and the elements shape geological structures, many influences have shaped me. I'm using textiles to create a series I call my personal geology. I've used an orb pieced of many different fabrics as the central element in these pieces. To capture the awe and wonder of my magical child, I created my world of possibilities. In mending the hurt, the pieced orb is damaged by cuts and tears. Stitching has mended the orb, though, making it whole again, but different, and perhaps more radiant. Gail Naughton. Breakthrough. With Breakthrough, my art quilting journey has taken a big step. I finally gave myself permission to do what I feel compelled to do. By not creating an artwork I felt was expected, I've opened myself to ideas for related work with more to explore within a defined style. I have decided I can claim to be a rebel in my art and still be a nice dilettante by nature. Fiona Blake. Reflections. Life is short and I hate wasting useful time. So I regularly reflect on what I've achieved. Am I happy with where I am right now, who I am right now, and where am I heading next? Reflections considers the journey we all take and the choices and reflections we make along the way. The archetypes that make up who we are guide us on that journey. Beth Salvia. I started this series in March and completed it in October. Through the process, my magical child assured me it was okay to play, make mistakes, and take my time. Time to learn that I love dyeing fabric, printing, piecing, and hand embellishment. To realize I have always been interested in places where human-made and natural environments overlap. To see a way forward into work that more deeply explores these themes. Here we have a changing landscape. and Resurgence with the cicada on the screen door. And then on the right, City Dweller. Diane Cutler. My work is ethereal and fragile. It is the manifestation of a personal conversation I have with plants. I am a self-taught artist on a never-ending journey to express something that is true and of beauty, that will speak to your heart and bring the spirit of nature into your home. And here we appreciate the nature child innocence. And please do read her statement in detail, because she explains this wonderful process of casting these from living plants. Diana Pruce. My process begins with setting a personal and focused intention for my expressions of color, shape, and line. Then it's playtime. I listen to the painting with an open mind and invite it to tell me what it needs. I embrace this method because I find it intriguing and surprising. It's the way I celebrate my inspiration, the delightful magic of life on the planet. And I know she mentions the nature child in her statement and also the explorer, but I think this piece, Follow the Sun, reflects a certain magical child in Diane as well. And here we have Strawberry Moon, and then Discovery, which is reflective of her explorer. Diane Claps. Diane started a large piece for the exhibition, but didn't believe she could complete it in time. So she decided to produce a small piece that would be a study for the larger one. She wrote, I was having so much fun that 2 separate series sprouted, so I set it aside to construct other small works. When I returned to My Path Is Not Straight, the idea for the gold thread emerged, and the beads, which had been in my stash and not touched for 15 years, came to represent the distractions that appear to me along my way, beautiful, if I will only take time to enjoy them. I'm full of ideas to continue working on my series. I also have a plan for the big piece, and all of it because I discovered my miser and followed my not so straight path. Diana S. Fox. Shaman Bunny. Inspired by the healer archetype, one of my life's passions is to assist others in finding their path to restoration. Denise Osso. Part of an ongoing and ever-evolving series on archetypes, these figurative works began as line drawings and came into life in unfired clay. The images are familiar, but also unexpected. My purpose was to find the energy of the archetype in each figure. My attention was on the shape and gesture as it was discovered. In creating these works, I concentrated on getting out of my head so something only my hands could imagine would emerge. And her statement, again, is essential in order to fully appreciate the narrative behind these pieces for her. And here we have my wounded child and my victim. And then also my saboteur. Debbie Durland. I love the process of dye painting and collaging my drawings with fabric. Feeling the story is also an important part. It was only after Q's journey was done, and Q was a dog that she lost early, a beloved dog she lost early. It was only after Q's journey was done that I saw the owl on the peak and realized the mountains looked like a dove opening its wings as if embracing. Bojangle Dance is a tribute to the song Mr. Bojangles, who danced in spite of still grieving the loss of his dog 20 years before. I think Q would want me dancing rather than crying, so I dance for her. Christine Barker. Discussion on the line. To eat an orange is to taste pure sunlight. It is the taste I choose to eat first thing every morning. Orange is a favorite color. It is warm and bright, which can also mean intellectual, and in the softer ginger tones, once my hair. It is the color of fire, the element where 3 of my archetypes sit, my dilettante, hedonist, and victim. In this piece, shades of orange with burgundy, yellow, and ginger all become a clear dialogue, a discussion on the line. Cheryl Costley in the Kiva. The Seeker is one of my core archetypes. The 2 series I am working on, the Kiva and the Earth series, are seeking journeys for me. I had rejected the Seeker archetype previously because of its association with being a wanderer or a nomad, which is not me, but I've sought spiritual pathways all my life, and I continue to do so. Cecilia Adair. My archetype cards are eco-dyed leaf prints on paper created by layering, wrapping tight, and boiling in onion skin water. I find the true flowers and plants among the marks and colors created and bring them forward using ink, colored pencil, and paint. And here we have dilettante, saboteur, and rebel. And I hope you'll take time to look more closely at these. The drawings that she's added are really, really, really lovely. Kathy Vieger. A friend recently commented that I am able to find beauty in things that most people never see. I consider that a compliment, as would most who identify as a nature child. Kathy uses a wet felting process from wool roving and created this piece, Forest Floor Vessel number 1, with terrific detail. And you see from the process that it's possible to incorporate other objects into the felting as she works so that she can get an even more wonderful texture in the final product. And here on the left, we have her Forest Floor 1 done in the same way. Carol Pollard, Masks of Integrity. For me, creating is an exchange between my rational, verbal, public, and my non-rational, non-verbal, hidden selves, unknown until I try to create something. Then looking at it, I see not only what I intended, but also something heretofore unrevealed about myself. I turn cold and my scalp prickles. I just revealed the self behind the mask. Becoming more comfortable with those unexpected revelations has been part of this archetypal journey of discovery. And here we have Nature Child on the right and Warrior. Carol Leach. Haven was inspired by my wounded child archetype. The narrative surrounding the egg is my feelings expressed in fabric paint. Crushing and painting silk to simulate an egg where I am safe from the world and the people that don't want me. My egg has been beaded and embroidered. I have my back to you so I don't see the dislike in your eyes. The egg is nestled on black satin embellished with embroidery. I have been exploring the crushed silk surface, and this is the third piece in my child archetype series. Blanche Dejean Parada, the Midwife. Even though I have not had the privilege of being a biological mother myself, the midwife archetype has been an especially powerful energy in my life. So for this catalog's theme, I chose to do a self-portrait as the midwife archetype, using paper and paint in a collage. This collage depicts metaphorically how I envision helping to support an individual to take flight, armed with the tools necessary to live a successful life. Becky Stack, Weathered Cedar, Beauty on the Marsh. My nature child archetype inspires much of my work. I photographed this old cedar tree one day while out looking for driftwood and loved the bleached areas and the increased texture of the grain. It reminded me of how beautiful weathered and worn can be, and to celebrate life and the resulting lines and wrinkles. Barbara Ide. Understanding and accepting archetypes, especially the prostitute, has been challenging. However, this work, Stand Tall, is inspired by the light side of the prostitute archetype. And it's a really wonderful story. If you didn't see it in the case study, I hope you will come back to the catalog and read it there. Access to an iPhone camera, daily walks on a limited route, and the editing available in photo apps has led to observing my environment with fresh eyes and intent. Pondering the archetypes also led to a renewed interest in family photos from my childhood, and this is a picture of Barb as a 6-year-old. Barbara Cardinal Sorge. As a person, I rely on the intuition and instinct that directs most aspects of my life's paths, art, relationships, and career, to name a few. Through my art, I allow and share a portion of my inner self with the outside world for consideration. The study of archetypes forced me to identify traits that guide my creative directions, both the good and the less positive sides. And here we have circulating around the dilettante. Bobby Gideon, The Secret Garden. The Secret Garden represents my seeker using hand-dyed and painted fabrics to form a pieced background using the Fibonacci sequence. The images are fused and appliqued, the piece is shaded using Inktense pencils, and hand embroidered and machine quilted. And again, these past couple of, well, every piece really, let's face it, every piece here deserves to be blown up and studied in more detail. Anne Caffone. In this series, I chose mixed media in order to assemble the collages quickly while thinking of my orphan child. I became fascinated with the correlation between the Wizard of Oz and the archetypes. As a person without confidence, I began to view myself as Dorothy and my cat lady Jane as Toto. I particularly related to the Scarecrow for his intelligence, the lion for being cowardly, and I just love the Tin Man's heart. Here we have Anne in Wonderland #1. I have a feeling I'm not in Florida anymore. Anne in Wonderland #2, Stay in Present Time. And Anne in Wonderland #3, Everything I Need is Always With Me. And I think Lady Jane looks a little freaked out playing the role of Toto. Don't drop her, Anne. Don't drop her. Amy Doigan Selmanoff, My Unwelcome Companion. On March 13th, 2020, I had surgery to remove a brain tumor. I came home from the hospital as the pandemic changed our world. I've been cancer-free since that time, yet my constant companion has been this heart-shaped unwelcome visitor who no longer resides in my brain, but is difficult to remove from my consciousness. Using MRI scans and software to manipulate the images, I printed, cut, and stitched this guest in an attempt to encourage it to move on. Allison Bainbridge. I plunge headlong into disaster. I've never made public the struggles I have had, but making the jacket has been a vehicle for exploring my own creative journey. and making an act of homage to all those who have struggled similarly. I am letting my magical child lead these two wounded creatures into the light. Al Bates Lombard. I really want you to make time to come back and read, of course, I've said it before, all the statements, but especially Visionary with a Side of Rebel. I've chosen in this particular talk to concentrate on Visionary with a Side of Hermit on the right. Monarch flutters from light to dark, a reminder of the path you did embark. The road is long and lonely. Make it be peaceful only. They will think you are carefree. The truth will set you free. They will think you are too intense. Don't take offense. Remember to grow in the direction you wish to go. It will glow. Remember to take a rest now and then, but then continue on again. And this is the delightful Visionary with a Side of Rebel, and the wonderful reflection that it casts because of the transparent parts of the artwork. Adriana Gigi Medeiros. For these latest pieces, I painted fabrics and used drawing, hand stitching, applique, and piecing techniques. The synergetic outcome was layered, complex work that signaled a personal artistic landmark. Cocoon is my self-constructed shroud of well-being and resilience. I had the good fortune to see this piece a couple of weeks ago in person. It's really, really, really underscores the fact that all of this is so terrific in person, and we're doing the best we can portraying it in this way so that we can share it. She wrote, "In tentacles, the cocoon has become my life-sustaining shell." And these are a combination of drawing, hand painting, and lots of handwork and embroidery. Congratulations to everyone who participated. And here we are. And I welcome comments and questions if you have them. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Well done. Well done, ye sisters of CST.
I think it's impossible to pick only one.
I know.
So impressive.
Pretty phenomenal, huh?
Yep, it sure is.
Yeah.
Inspirational, really inspirational. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I observed while you're thinking about whether you'd like to make a comment or not is what a wonderful tribute to the idea that these concepts can be articulated visually in any way. We have wonderful examples of abstraction. We have wonderful examples of fairly literal storytelling. And we have everything in between. And as someone said yesterday in one of the meetings that I attended, isn't it great to look around and realize you are surrounded by artists? You are artists. You can claim it. And those of you who didn't necessarily participate this time, you didn't participate this time for whatever reason, you are artists too. And it's so affirming. And that's the gift I want you to carry and give to yourself during this wonderful solstice holiday season, that you are artists and you're in the company of artists. And what could be better than that? Plus $1 million, maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Other comments? You can either raise your hand or you can just spill out. We're at the end here, and I know I'm herding cats, so feel free to speak up.
Jane, thank you for this opportunity. It's just been amazing.
You're
Thank you.
You're welcome, Amy. Thank you. I'm glad you could be here.
Yeah, a wonderful diversity of artwork. It was great.
Thank you, Lucy. And
And I just think it's so great to be a part of this with the entire community and everything, to just, you know, be a little piece of it and to see the whole community, to see the work.
yeah, you know, it's an interesting thing that when you realize that you're part of a group, you know, I went solo for a long time and I had a rebel and I thought it was okay. But it's so much easier to surrender because you know you've got the group behind you or you're part of it. And if I've learned any real lesson over the past 6 or 7 years of doing this, like right from the very beginning, it's that I could actually give up all that armor in certain circumstances and just be who I was, and it was going to be okay. It's like one of the artists said, you know, you can just be enough. It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to take the hands that are up right now. So please, Ann Marshall.
Thank you very much. At the meeting yesterday, I wasn't able to speak, but to your comment about we're all artists, that was really my experience with creative strength training, is that I felt during the time I really staked my claim as an artist, like as an identity. And that kind of really just goes straight to the core. And then the other part of that was really beginning to go public. So there is just a sense of that unfolding. So that's on a personal note, but in terms of the work that just was displayed, I have a real sense of like standing at the rim of the Grand Canyon and just seeing such magnificent force of nature and beauty and art that words can hardly really convey it, but just that total magnanimous going on forever. I felt the forces of the archetypes, you know, infused over thousands of years and etching us into what we are today. So that's just a very powerful experience. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Well, that was beautifully said. Thank you. Miriam.
I just thought it was astounding, and every piece touched my heart. And I thank you all, as the whole year has. I haven't participated actively a lot, but it's been very, very meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Susan Smith.
The exhibit was just breathtaking. The work and the words are so heart-touching. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, the statements were phenomenal. And indeed, you know, it was really hard. It took me several days to go through everything and keep pulling out the paragraphs and figuring out what about this and what about that. And I thought, well, this isn't a 6-hour documentary, Jane. You've just got to get on it here. Monica.
I wanted to thank you, Jane and Wayne and everybody else, Lynn, who worked on this. This is an unbelievably large project that you've taken on top of everything else that you do for us in CST. And my heartfelt gratitude to all of you. Without this extra work, we wouldn't have had this beautiful exhibition. And I'm just in awe of the work that was presented today. And I really look forward to the recording and being able to listen to all your other words on all the other artists, and also to see this as a physical book. That, yeah, I will definitely be ordering this one and having it as part of my collection. But I just, you know, just from my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. And of course, I don't know whether Lynn Lucanen is here today. If she is, maybe she'll step forward. I can't always see the entire roster, but she definitely, without Lynn, we couldn't have done this. And of course, Wayne, being the reticent, stand in the background kind of person that he is, isn't rushing out here to take a call. But if he sneaks down the stairs and I see him, I'll grab him so we can. Without him, none of this would happen. You know, you would have gotten a little PDF. I could put it together, but it wouldn't do it justice. Wouldn't do it justice. Janice.
Jane, I just want to say a personal thank you from the very depths of my heart, because without discovering Jane Dunewald and creative strength training, I could not have pulled from my depths the work that I have done for the last 3 years. So Jane, I am forever, ever grateful to you. Thank you for showing me a new side of me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's hard for me to accept that.
Please do.
Public, being the daughter of a Protestant pastor, which everyone can understand. I'm in recovery, so I'm doing my best. So thank you very much. Thank you. Denise.
Echoing what Monica said, to say thank you so much to Wayne. What a beautiful design he created to figure something out that would be simple enough to contain what everybody did, but had enough grit going on that it felt right. Just great. And thank you for creating this container for us. I'm honored to be here with everybody, and I can't wait to read every word and enlarge every image to look at it, because it's just wonderful.
Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Ileana, glad you're here.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this catalog. And I loved how personal it is from each person's expression, and that you brought it to us in this way, that we could be together. And it's a lovely closing, ending action on your part. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Marilyn.
Thank you seems inadequate, but the container you have created for all of us and your support team has been incredible. And I appreciate so much all of the participants and the heartfelt expressions. And I think there's a great deal that we can learn as we listen to the words again, and as if we're fortunate, we can look at that catalog and absorb so much more as we go forward. So thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, I think it's really important to remember, I mean, I never lose track of this, that it doesn't matter how many bright ideas I have or big plans I want to make, without other people who are part of it, none of this happens. So I can envision a catalog and Wayne can design his little heart out, but without other people trusting and sharing and sending work, we don't have anything. And so much of what we do, you know, it's so easy. I think the culture sort of encourages in a way, you know, we're encouraged to be independent and free thinking and on our own. And there's a lot about the culture that really admires that. But I think we have to be really careful to not get so consumed by that. We can't buy into that, because in a lot of ways, it's a dead end. You know, if we don't create a space where anybody's welcome and where we do our damnedest to make sure everyone who wants to be there is there and feels safe enough and feels appreciated enough to send work or not based on whether you're ready or not. There's no judgment. But without the 69 people, you know, last year there were 32. So this is great. So next year, let's see what's 69, 32. Next year, I hope we have over 100. And if we do, Wayne's probably going to like go into hiding somewhere. We'll deal with that when we get there, you know. But I'm just trying to say in a rather ham-handed way that I know I do a good job at what I do. I know I do. And I think it's really important that we learn to acknowledge what we do well and be willing to say it without being braggy. And that's the distinction that has to be made. But on the other hand, anybody who thinks that they did something completely on their own is very foolish and misguided. So I appreciate all of these comments so much, and I appreciate your comments, Marilyn. But I just want to point out that it really, no matter what anyone thinks, all of this requires each of us to be there and to be willing to step up in order for it to be absolutely the most spectacular, finest experience that it can be. And I love it when I see that happening before my eyes. And I do in the emails I get and in the meetings that I attend. I know not everybody can be there, but it's very gratifying. I can't think of anything that would be better than where we are right now doing this. Linda Vandiver.
One of the many things that I want to say about CST is not only the community that we have found ourselves in that's loving and caring and giving, but the strength that we as a group have gotten from CST and your leadership. It's just, I mean, I've grown in being stronger, and I think a lot of us have that. That strength is something that you can't put a price tag on. It's just something you feel inside, and you go and you can make your art no matter what. It's yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I wanted to say. And I just thank you. You know that. And I'm not going to cry. Bye.
Don't cry. If you cry, I'll cry. And I have on mascara. It'd be a really bad day. I hardly have any eyelashes left anymore, but that's a different story. Jeanette, glad you're here.
Hi, thank you. A couple of things I want to say. One is I appreciate every single one of you who are on this spotlight today. Even though, you know, we all play different things, we still learn from each other. So just being there and opening up your hearts to share your art is inspiring and teaching. And Jane giving this platform as our caretaker, if you will. And we know what that means to be a caretaker, right? So I'm in awe of all of you ladies. So thank you for being open enough to and have enough courage to share, because you've inspired me, not just Jane with the platform and, you know, herding us like cats to do what we need to do, but it all means a lot. And Jane, I'd like to just say, I know it's hard being a pastor's daughter and a caretaker. I just challenge you to sit in that, sit in what you've created and let whatever comes up, come up and just enjoy it, because you deserve that. You earned it and you showed us. So just like we have to sit in it because we're now artists, we ask that you do that because it makes you stronger, makes you better, a better teacher, and it just pulls us up higher. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah Durland, did I see that you wanted to speak, but your hand isn't up now? Before
yes. Okay. I just want to say, well, number one, I agree with absolutely everything everybody has said. So each time I say, oh, I'm going to say, I agree with Eliana. Oh, I agree with Jeanette. I agree with everybody. Just the feeling that you've given me, I just want to thank you, because you've given me confidence. And I still don't have necessarily a lot of it. I have a long way to go, but you've given me the ability to kind of step outside of that saboteur that just says, no, you know, this isn't good enough or whatever. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Everything was beautiful. the writing really took my breath away. I didn't really expect that. But there were many that I could absolutely identify. I could find myself in that piece, which was really an amazing experience today because there were just so many. So I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing, and everybody else who worked on what they did and that they're here. It's a real community, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. And you know the thing about confidence? It's like sourdough. You get a little bit, and then you put it in the right environment and warm it up a little bit. And before you know it, you're getting more and more and more and more. It's a really good thing.
I'm going to remember that visual.
Yeah, do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Lindsay Webster, glad you're here.
Me too. I wanted to comment about what you said about the fact that the show is inclusive, because I think that's what allows everybody to participate. Because people that are afraid to submit something because it's juried or whatever, like this is an inclusion of every human being that's a part of CST, and it's, to me, it's a manifestation of your gifting to each one of us, because I think it's really rare to have a show that invites all to participate and bring whatever they have to bring. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, as I've said many times, that's a really important part of what this is all about. Because otherwise, you know, if I know I've said it before, so I won't belabor it, but if I said everybody here is welcome and we're all going to do this or that, and then I said, oh, except for the show, I'm going to jury that, and that can only be the best pieces, which really means the pieces I like, which is never fair. That's the rock and roll of juried shows. But we can't even bring that into this environment. It would be poison. So somehow we have to figure out how to do a show that might have 100 pieces in it, and by God, we will. So there you go. So thanks, though. Thanks for that. Suzanne, glad you're here.
Thank you. Let's see, I'm sitting out on the lanai, so if it gets noisy, I'll have to maybe move. But one of the things that's been really important for me about this particular exhibit is, first of all, that it was not juried. Now, I've been in juried shows, I've been juried into shows, I've been excluded from them, I've been a juror myself. But there's always that thing that hangs over, that am I going to be accepted? And is it worth the effort to go through that? And I like the fact that it's anyone. The only requirements were that you meet the deadline and that you write a statement, and that took decent. Those are the requirements. And that, I think, was really helpful to me. That for a number of years, I've been sort of flailing around trying to decide what my direction was, and having discovered using the archetypes as an inspiration has really put me back into where I wanted to be, and I appreciate that. I don't know where I'm going to go with it. I have an idea of what I want to do, but I'm trying to just take it as it comes. And that, I think, is a really important thing for me anyway. I know a lot of people like to be much more organized and planful, and I can do that too. But I think I need to be just allowing myself to be free. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's an important element of staying in present time when it comes to creating. So, Barb Sorge.
Let me unmute here. I want to echo what the last two just said. This is just such an incredible sense of community. And when I try to explain CST to people, I'm always stumbling and trying to explain what the archetypes are and why we're studying and what direction it's giving me. And you know, I can't express it yet, except that I know inside me, and I think I've found such a group of brave women that have the courage to expose some of the most raw inner corners of their personality, and that we're working through this. And people look at me and they think like, at 73, you're still trying to find yourself or something. And I think that that's good. It's going to keep me another 73 years, and it's all another 73 years. And this bravery, I think I could walk into a room and we would all be there, and I'd know a little bit about these incredible creative people that someday I hope I'm going to aspire to be. What a learning journey. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome. Yeah, well, I'd say to anybody who says, you know, you're 73 and you're still trying to find yourself, well, I'm sure glad I'm on the planet, and I hope it's going to take me 25 more years, because that means I'll still be here. I'd rather be here than not be here, frankly. Barbide.
Yeah, this is kind of a metaphor for my experience, Jane. And my background was an administrator in a school, and I had the opportunity to allow teachers to design their own plans for a little 2-week summer school. But one of the things was a non-audition show choir. And this was multi-grade level show choir. But if you had a desire to try something that you really thought was cool, you were accepted and you became an equal important participant to create the medley and perform. And so I look at that, Jane, as something I think I know now what those kids experienced. So thanks.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Well, on Thursday, I attended the Montessori School caroling concert, and it was also pajama day. So all these little kids had on their pajamas, and they were all singing Jingle Bells and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And then they sang a song where all the parents got little tea lights, and we lifted up the tea lights every time they sang the word joy in the song and lowered them. And afterwards, Zira was just beaming from ear to ear, and she said, "And I got to share my beautiful voice with everybody." And I thought, that's exactly the energy that we want to recapture, don't we? That's why we're spending a lot of time revisiting the child. So we can confidently, Deborah, share our beautiful voices with everybody. Well, Lynn Lukanen is here. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hey.
Lynn.
Hi. I wanted to pop in and say hello, primarily because the word that keeps coming up for me is something that Barb Sorge just said, and that's about courage. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of fortitude to expose your artwork to the world. I mean, not just to this community, but this is now a public document that will be out there. And I think that it's really important. But from my standpoint, the work that I did with this, where I saw the courage, where there were so many people who had never taken photographs of their artwork. And then they had to learn how to resize their artwork. And then they had, and go through the process of submitting. All of that is new territory for many people, and it takes a lot of courage. So, and the other thing that I saw was that I would see these little pieces. I'd see the slides or I'd see the words come through, but to see them all together in this vehicle that Wayne has created is it just opens my heart so much to everyone in this group. So thank you so much. And thanks for letting me be part of it. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Couldn't do it without you, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
We will, but this year we needed you. Thank you.
It was great. Thank you.
Linda Miller, glad you're here.
Happy to be here. I've not been able to attend a lot of the meetings, but even so, and seeing this work, this exhibit, really feeling a part of the community, and it's just so wonderful. And I thank you, Jane, for the opportunity, and thanks to everyone for sharing. I think everything that people have been saying, I can relate to, and it's really great. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I found it so interesting how many seeker pieces there were. I think I could put together a small subset of a show called The Seeker. The 30 variations on the seeker, each one different and wonderful. And isn't that its own sort of, I don't know, really goodness. So I loved your piece.
Thanks.
All right, well, we've wound down. Any other comments? Thanks for being here on a busy afternoon, although I know, well, let's see, Allison and Lynn are thinking about putting on their pajamas by now. So it's been extremely fulfilling and rewarding to put this together and to share it with you. So thank you very much. Thanks for all of you who took time out this afternoon to be here. And if I'm not careful, I will tear up because it's so hard to believe how fast this year flew by.
Oh, God.
We are the last official event of the year. I do hope that you'll make time to join me briefly on the 31st at 2 o'clock again for the Burning Bowl ceremony. And we'll talk more about that in an email this week.
You're going to record it, right, Jane?
Yes, I will record it because I know not everybody can be there.
I'm going to have to do it after the fact because I've got a New Year's Eve 1 mile walk that I do every year.
Oh, good for you.
It conflicts.
Yeah, that's okay. That's an important thing. In any event, I hope you have a blessed holiday and a blessed solstice and however else you celebrate. And we're not going anywhere. And unfortunately, this morning we pulled the plug on a family get together here in Texas because people in other parts of the country just didn't feel very comfortable traveling right now. So it's going to literally me, myself, and Wayne here celebrating Christmas. So that'll be fine.
There are a lot of us like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, maybe on Christmas we should have a sign-up day and just party on or something, but not that. Anyhow, thank you again for this year. And I think this is one of those situations, where you stand and you keep hugging each other and you don't want to say goodbye. So I am saying thanks for a wonderful year again, and please be in touch. I hope you'll be with me next year. If you're not, I wish you absolutely the best. And there's always more to come.
Merry Christmas, Jane.
Merry Christmas.
Wonderful Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Be safe, everybody.
Love you all.
Happy holidays.